You're listening to School Counseling Simplified, a podcast with easy-to-implement strategies for busy school counselors. Here's your host, Rachel Davis from Bright Futures Counseling.
Hey there, have you joined Impact yet? Remember, this is my new membership program for school counselors where you'll get access to monthly class lesson plans, small group curriculum, and individual activities. Plus, you'll get to connect with me and other school counselors through live Zoom calls and in our exclusive Facebook community. Wouldn't it be nice to have someone plan all of your counseling lessons and activities, provide the resources to you each month, and show you step by step how to use them, when to use them, and who to use them with? If you're thinking, heck yes, then Impact is made for you. Your counseling life is about to get a whole lot easier. So what are you waiting for? Sign up today at stressfreeschoolcounseling.com/impact. Hey there, thank you for listening to another episode of School Counseling Simplified. So we are starting a new month and a new series, so happy April. I love April because it's like spring and new beginnings, spring break. I don't know, it's just kind of a fun time of year with a fresh start, and with the time change, I know it's way nicer to have some more daylight time. It's kind of less gloomy, if you know what I mean. Here in Costa Rica, where I live, we actually don't observe daylight savings time. So I was on the equivalent of like Central Time, and now I'm in Mountain Time because you guys changed and we didn't. So it's kind of cool because I have family in Georgia, and then I lived in San Diego and I have a lot of friends there. So I was 1 hour from Georgia, and now I'm only 1 hour from San Diego. So that's just kind of a cool fun fact about Costa Rica. But I want to talk to you guys today about individual counseling. So, as you know, there's the 3 tiers of school counseling. You have Tier 1, and those are those classroom SEL lessons or guidance lessons, and that's the intervention that you're delivering to all students. So this is a preventative intervention and a way to deliver social-emotional skills and character education lessons to every single student at your school. That way they feel prepared to handle those situations, and this prevents them from getting referred to down the line, right? Because remember, as a school counselor, our job is to kind of put ourselves out of a job. So what I mean by that is that we want to equip our students with the social, emotional skills that they need to be successfully independent, and they don't need our help every single week. But we do know some kiddos need a little more help, and that's why we have those small groups. So that's moving right along into Tier 2, and Tier 2 is small group counseling, where you'll see students in groups of like 4, 5, 6 kids who all have a similar area of need. That's what we focused on last month. We did class lessons 2 months ago, small groups last month, and now individual sessions this month. So that is the third and final tier. If you're thinking of a triangle, this is the tip top, and these are the students who need even additional intervention. So perhaps the small group wasn't effective, and they would really benefit from a one-on-one individualized setting. So these are the students I want to talk about this month. And today I want to talk to you about how to just get started with individual sessions. To be honest with you, as a counselor, individual sessions are my biggest struggle, and I feel like the least prepared or least expert in that area. So I love small groups. They're totally my passion. Then I also love class lessons, and while I used to kind of struggle with classroom management skills and behavior management, I've learned some strategies to do that better that I talk about in a previous episode. If you want to go back, probably like 6 episodes where I talk about classroom management skills. But, and I feel confident in my class lessons, and I love working with the big groups of kids, and then I love working with the small group kids as well. But the individuals have always been a little intimidating to me because I feel like there's no buffer. There's no other kids to bounce ideas off of, or no class to kind of, get talking. It's just one-on-one, very raw, and completely up to you to lead and facilitate this counseling session. So I found them very intimidating, and I felt unprepared with what I had learned in grad school on how to do these. So through years of trial and error and just, figuring out different things, and honestly just gaining experience, the more you do it, the better you get at it usually. I've developed some systems that make me feel more confident now about class or individual sessions, and I want to share those with you. So this month we'll be focusing on those. Today we're going to talk about just getting started with individual counseling. So before you can get started, it's essential that you determine who you're going to see, when you're going to see them, and how to get organized. So first, let's talk about who you're going to see for individual counseling. So I already mentioned you're serving all students through Tier 1 interventions. Then you have some students in Tier 2. And then these are your Tier 3 students. So I saw a really great visual online. I think I shared it. I think it was on Instagram, actually, from Two Blondes Counseling. I think that's their handle. They're awesome. They're out of California as well. I'm over on Instagram on Bright Futures Counseling, so I'd love to connect with you over there. And I'll tag them so maybe you can see the post. But they shared an image of a tier, so a triangle tier of all 3 tiers, but then it also showed it 3-dimensionally, so you could see that the kids in level 2 are also receiving level 1 services, and then the kids in level 3 are receiving 1, 2, and 3. So I just want to clarify, and that visual is fantastic. I'll try to find it and share it again on Instagram. But I want to clarify that the students you're seeing individually are also receiving class lessons and small group instruction. Now you may be thinking, what? They're receiving small group instruction? So there are a few exceptions to this rule, but yes, so basically it goes like this. Everyone's getting the preventative lesson, then it's a referral-based system. So if there's some students who are having a hard time, teachers or parents, or maybe the students themselves will refer to counseling. Then you're going to form small groups, like we talked about last month, different areas of need. So let's say you have 4 students who are struggling with social skills. You group them together to do an 8-week social skills group. Of course, you're collecting data and assessing how they're doing. Now, let's say of those students, 2 of them continue to struggle and the group wasn't effective. So then you can talk with their parents and teachers and see if they're a good candidate for individual counseling. Maybe they need a little more in-depth instruction or personalized instruction. So then you would schedule those students to see individually. So they've kind of gone through, they're continuing to get the class lessons each month, and then they have completed a small group, but based on the data, we've decided as a team that they need that individualized attention. So that's one way to do it. Now, there are cases where students, let's say you get a referral for social skills, and no one else in the entire school needs help with social skills, which that's kind of a silly one because I think we can think of tons of students who can do social skills. But let's say it's anger management. Maybe there's one student who's really struggling with anger management, and you don't have any other kids of the same age or near their grade level who are also struggling with anger management, but you still want to help that child. You don't want to say, oh, you're really struggling? Okay, well, wait till we open up another group next semester. You still want to help them. So in that case, you could see them individually, even though they have never been in an anger management group. But ideally, they're working their way up the tiers through the different interventions. And then another exception is kind of what I like to call like a check-in. So when I see individual sessions, and I'll get to this in a second when I talk about how often you're seeing them, but you're seeing one student consistently over a period of time. A check-in is when maybe a teacher or a parent or your administrator is concerned about a very specific incident, and they're asking you to check in with that student one-on-one. So you're going to pull them aside one-on-one and check in, but you're not necessarily doing like a consistent counseling plan with them. So an example of this is, let's say a student has experienced a trauma. So maybe something happened to their family outside of school, and it's kind of a traumatic event. It's urgent, and your principal says, hey, this happened yesterday. I'd like for you to check in with them today. So in that case, you would pull them in, check in with them. This is like an initial check-in, and then you can decide if you want to go forward, assess the situation, and see, do they need individual counseling from me? Do they need an outside referral? Or is this just one-time check-in will suffice? So that's kind of a check-in assessment situation. So that's a little different. So those are the 3 ways to determine which students you will see. You're either seeing students who have completed a group, and based on the data you collected in the group, you now know that they need more individualized attention. Or you're seeing a student who you wanted to place in a group, but there were no other group members to place them with, so you're seeing them individually. Or if you're talking to someone individually, it could be because it's a one-time check-in where you're going to assess a situation to determine if they need future counseling services. So that's how you're determining which students to see, based on referrals. So you're going to have referral forms, and I have a freebie referral form for you I'll link to in the show notes. But you're going to have these, you can have them digitally on your website. You can have a QR code outside your office to have it digital as well. A QR code in your Bitmoji classroom. You can have good old-fashioned like paper printed ones. So lots of different ways, but you want to have clear communication and access on how people can access your counseling services. So you want the referral process to be very streamlined and easy and clear. So that way parents and teachers know exactly what to do if they need to use you for counseling services. So you'll receive the referrals. Now, a lot of times parents will make a referral, and of course, like, it's their kid, right? So you see the big picture and you know all the different kids you're seeing and all the different pieces, but to them, that's their number one priority, is their own child. So sometimes they'll refer a student and they'll say, oh, my son needs help with social skills and it's, super important. I really want you to see him. I'm really worried about him. And, you want to honor their request, but they may be asking for individual counseling. And sometimes you need to tell them, first, we're going to try a group. It's in your child's best interest, especially if the topics, social skills, friendship, relational aggression, bullying prevention, any of those. Sometimes it's even, I believe, better in a group setting to work on the skills as you teach them. Like, you can teach a social skill, but if they can't practice it with other kids, it's a little difficult. So I recommend always encouraging them to go through the tiers and say, okay, well, as you know, last month we did lessons across the school on social skills, or we have a social skills lesson coming up in the spring, but I'm also offering a social skills small group. After that, your student graduates from the group, we can reassess and see if there's a need for individual counseling. So that's another thing you can do. Parents, may kind of push you on that because their child is their number one priority and they think it's the most important thing ever. But be confident in your skills as a counselor and you know what's best. And oftentimes it's best for a child to try out the group first. And maybe after the group, they don't need the individualized attention. Or if they do, that's okay too. It doesn't mean it was a mistake to start with the group because they've learned skills in the group that you can then later deep dive in individually. So that's how you're finding out which students to see. Now let's talk about when you're going to see students. So I recommend that you see individual students one time a week for 6 to 8 weeks. So I usually see individual kiddos for about 20 minutes. My groups are usually 30 to 40 minutes, but there's more talking, there's more, taking turns for everyone to share. So it takes a little longer. With an individual student, I find 30 minutes is honestly too long. So what I do is, this is kind of a scheduling tip for you. I, on my Google Calendar, will put a 30-minute block for the individual, and then that gives me a 10-minute buffer that allows for travel time, or if they're late, or if I'm late or something. And then if we only take exactly the 20 minutes, I have 10 minutes to plan or take notes about our session we just had, or to kind of plan for the next session. So that's a little insider scheduling tip. I have some more scheduling tips for you if that sounded interesting to you, or you feel like you could use help with scheduling. I have a scheduling freebie I'll link to in the show notes as well. Okay, so I recommend 20-minute sessions over the period of 6 to 8 weeks. So the duration would be, 20 minutes, 6 to 8 weeks. And the frequency, you want to do this weekly. So you could do it, every other week, but then it's really hard for the students and you, honestly, to remember what you worked on. You could do it twice a week based on the severity of the need, but I think the one time a week is a good go-to one to start with. Now, this is important. After you meet with them, you're going to reevaluate and see if the student needs continued sessions or an outside referral. So it's important to remember that you are not a therapist and you do not want to create codependence. So let me share with you a story about when I first started counseling. I think it was my second year, and I had this student. She was great, and she really struggled with anxiety. So her parents recommended her for counseling, and the teacher agreed that it would be a good idea. So I, have the referral. I schedule her, start seeing her right away. Well, I made the mistake of not having like an end date for our services. I was just like, okay, I'll see her every week. And I saw her every single week for like the entire school year. So there was no stopping point where we were reassessing her goals. And it sounds like, oh, well, she's getting even more support. But it was actually a disservice to her. And I think it increased her anxiety because it wasn't clear to her when our sessions were going to be over. And that made her anxious. And it wasn't fair to her to know that, like, okay, this is what we're working on. This is our clear objective for each session. This is the goal we're trying to work on. And then we're going to stop and reevaluate. Because remember, again, you are not a therapist. You are a school counselor. I mean, you may be listening to this podcast and you might be a therapist. But my person I'm speaking to and my experience is as a school counselor. So your job is to provide solution-focused counseling services that will help the students be successful in a school setting. So you're providing them with these skills to help them in the academic, career, and personal social realms. And you can go to the Ask website and get all the details on everything there. I'll link to that in the show notes as well. But basically, you're not here just to be like a sounding board to listen to these kids talk every day, all year long. That's doing a disservice to them and to you and to your other students because you have a limited amount of time that you need to schedule everyone in. So, like I said, it's important to assess your progress. So we mentioned data collection when I was talking about small groups a few weeks ago, and we are going to have a data collection episode where I'll get a little more into this on how exactly to assess how the services are going. But it is important that you, at a minimum, I hope you're using data collection tools, but at a minimum that you're talking to the student, to the parent, and the teacher and saying, how are we feeling about this? Do we feel like we're making progress? Do we feel like we should refer out? Because there are therapists and there are services in the community that you can refer parents to that are outside of you. That doesn't mean that you're failing or that you can't do it. It's just a different job, right? Like you're not going to hire a gardener to clean your house. They're different positions. So the house cleaner can take care of your house plants, but if it's an outside plant, then you need a gardener to come in. That's like an on-the-fly example I thought of, but I hope that makes sense for you. So that determines how long you should see students for. I want you to remember that you're not supposed to be seeing a student each week for the entire year. Now, I do encourage you to build these lasting relationships with students, and it's great when kids stop by on their way to class and say, hey, and you can talk for 5 minutes. Like, that's different. That's excellent. Before school, lunch, after school, in between classes, whatever. But I'm talking about having a individual counseling session with no end date. That can be problematic. Okay, and the third thing you need to know when you're getting started with individual counseling is my secret organization strategy. So I say it's a secret, but I'm telling you it's not really a secret. And it's not fancy, but a good old manila folder goes a long way. So first off, did anyone ever used to call these vanilla folders because they're like a cream color? I, like more recently than I would like to admit, learned that it's manila folder. And I'm curious why it's called that as well. I know that's the capital of the Philippines. I'm not sure if there's a connection there. I'm just wondering if anyone else felt that way. Maybe it's just me. But anyways, a good old manila folder goes a long way. So you know what I'm talking about. They're those tan folders or cream-colored folders, vanilla-colored folders with a tab. So what you're going to do is write the student's name on the tab. So for example, Rachel D on the tab. Then you're going to open up the folder, and on the left-hand side, you're going to jot down each time you meet with the student. So it's kind of like a log, but you're not writing big notes here. You're just doing a quick note of what you did. So April 4th, self-regulation journal. And then, the next week, right? April, whatever, 10th, discussion cards, self-regulation discussion cards, or something like that. That's a way for you to remember what you did. And so you may think, well, how would I forget? But if you have a big caseload, which I'm sure you do, then it is easy to forget. So you want to be able to reference that. You can also write little notes. Maybe they're going on vacation, or you can say something like, oh, I saw that you, hung out with your cousins. How did that go? Or little things to kind of jog your memory on that student's specific case. But you don't want to write anything confidential here. You're not writing anything super detailed. This is just a quick little memo to jog your memory. Now, in addition to that, you're going to keep their materials in the folder. So if you're working on a self-regulation journal with them, they would do a couple pages, you keep it in the folder, and then when they come back, it's right there. So it's their folder just for them, and then you can alphabetize them in a file cabinet or something for quick and easy access. Now, when you're finished with your counseling sessions, you're going to send home the folder with them. So you're going to keep the folder for safekeeping. That way they don't lose any of their activities. And then when the counseling sessions are concluded, you send it home. They can show their parents what they've been working on, which is awesome. So that's a great way for parents to be involved. Now, you could say, well, what if I send it home each week so parents could check in? That's an option as well, but let's be real. The chances of that folder making it in the backpack to the parents and back to you are rare. So I suggest sending it at the end. And I'll talk more in the next episode about how to communicate with parents throughout the counseling services that you're providing. Now, another fun thing I do, so I have the notes on the inside, their name on the tab, and then I keep all the activities inside. But then if you are an elementary school counselor, or maybe middle school, I don't know, probably just elementary, I recommend using stickers. So I'll actually link to them in the show notes. I found them on Amazon. It's one of my affiliate links I'll put in there. But they are these awesome sticker packs with the cutest stickers, fun stuff like donuts and kittens and I don't know, just silly stuff. I think pool floats was even in there and pizza and all kinds of stuff. The kids really liked it, but I found these stickers, and so I have the students pick a sticker. So I'll show them, like, okay, you get to pick a sticker off this page each week, and they love it. It's such a simple thing, but they super love it, and they put it on their folder, and that's serving as two things. Number one, it's serving as an incentive for attendance. So I've had kids, I do this in groups too, and I'll have kids be like, how does she have more stickers than me? I'm like, oh, because you missed a session. So it's a fun way. They want to come. They want to get that sticker. It's an incentive for attendance. And then it also doubles as a progress monitoring tool. So you want students to be able to track the progress of their counseling sessions so they can anticipate when they're going to end. So like that student I was referring to earlier, it made her feel anxious not knowing when her sessions were going to end, as it would many of us. So this is a clear way. You can say we're going to meet 8 times. And look, you have 4 stickers, so we're halfway. You have 4 more to go. So that's a cool way that they can keep track of, how many sessions they have left and kind of get excited about it. That way it's not a surprise, because that is a counselor fail that I have done in the past as well, is students, walk in and I'm like, oh, hey guys, I forgot it's your last session today. And they're like, what? Which is not fair and not cool at all. So anyways, that's a cool way to keep track of their progress of their individual sessions and to serve as an incentive for attendance. Now, if you're meeting virtually, obviously this option won't work for you, so you can use a Google Drive folder to keep the activities. In this case, you could share it with parents and they could see it each time, because you don't have to worry about a physical paper getting lost. And you could come up with some other type of incentive. So it could be like a virtual stamper sticker, or just like the same thing. You could have like a Google Doc and then you're adding a different stamper sticker. And if you're doing it virtually, you could find out something of their interest. So let's say they really love basketball. You could find like an image of a basketball and add a new basketball each time to serve as the progress tracker as well. So you can do that. Obviously, kind of like a lot of things are virtually, I don't think it's as great, but it'll totally do and get the same job done. And one bonus tip I have for you is to do campus check-ins. So I was telling you how often that you're going to see students. I mentioned like once a week, but I think you should do campus check-ins as well. So what I mean by that is that you want to remember these are your most severe kiddos, right? These are your highest need students. So once a week isn't that often, especially if it's only 20 minutes, but I think that's a good amount of time to do the actual counseling session. But if you can have your eyes on them more often than that, that's better. So for example, like if you see them in the hallway, look for them at lunch, at recess. You could swing by their class and do an observation. I'll go into detail a little more on that in a couple weeks. But just kind of keep your eyes on them, check in with them and walk by them for a second if they're in between classes and ask them, hey, how's it going? Or little check-ins. Did you get a chance to practice that skill we were talking about? I think those go a long way. So just a real casual check-in. You're not going to plan these or put them on your calendar. They're just little occurrences that happen throughout the day. Now, virtually, it will be a little harder, but just send them however you're communicating, whether it's through email or whatever messaging platform you're using with your students. Send them a little message, midweek before you're going to see them again to check in and see how things are going. I think those little check-ins go a long way when it comes to building rapport. Okay, well, I hope that was helpful. So that's how you can get started with your individual counseling sessions. Don't forget to head to the show notes for those freebies, and I'll talk to y'all next week.
Thanks for listening to School Counseling Simplified. You can find the links from today's episode in the show notes. If you'd like to connect with Rachel, she's on Instagram and Teachers Pay Teachers at Bright Futures Counseling. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any episodes of School Counseling Simplified. Talk to you next week.